good morning, everybody. It's Rise and Grind Morning Show, kicking it off Wednesday, 8:03 a.m. on June 12th, 2024. Eric Rintamacki's back from Vegas. He's alive and he's well, and I'm sure all of the stories will stay in Vegas. We've got the Chef Talks Lions here with us this morning. And today we're going to kick off Lions Legends series. So it's something that I've promised that we were going to talk about for a while. And I wrote a lot of articles last year. So when I started doing this, I started writing. I wanted to live out my dream of being a journalist and talking about sports. So I started a website, started a blog site, whatever you want to call it. Website never got finished. It's a long story. But I started writing, and then podcasting just took over. So I stopped writing, but I'm going to get back to it once we get enough people on board. So I want to review some of the articles that I wrote about Lions Legends. We're going to start with the GOAT today, Barry Sanders. So good morning, gentlemen. How you guys doing today? Chef, we'll start with you. What's happening, man?
Nothing much is happening, but I am ready, willing, and able to talk Barry Sanders forever into perpetuity. As long as you want to talk about it, I can do it.
All right. And good morning, Eric. Man, how was your trip? Tell us a little bit if you can.
Fantastic. And I'm going to tell you what, if you ever get a chance to go to the Sphere in Las Vegas, the Sphere is a new seventh wonder of the world. It is beyond what I can tell you it is. You have to experience it. It is beyond anything I've ever been to. The outside of it, the inside of it, everything with it totally blew me away. I am not a Grateful Dead fan, and we went to Dead and Company. I am now kind of a Dead fan, and it was more for the visuals than the band themselves. I'm telling you what, dude, it transported you to another world. I got abducted by aliens, and now I'm back. I'm telling you what, it was absolutely amazing. You can't even describe it.
Did you guys do Cirque du Soleil while you were there?
Nope, we didn't do any shows. We were so whipped because we weren't getting back because of the 3-hour time difference. It was like 6 a.m. our time home when we were getting back each night after the show, because we'd want to go gambling and eat and all that stuff after the show. Who wants to go to a show and then just go right to bed? That's not how it goes in Vegas. So
right.
We had some fun, and I tell you what, man, I didn't drink, I didn't do drugs, but I sure felt like I did.
I bet Vegas is it's a wild place, man. It's a different land in and of itself. I mean, you think it's just a place you go visit, you have fun, but it like you said, it's like almost like you're transported to a different world. It is is that incredible over there. So, all right, without further ado, let's talk about some Lions news. So yesterday, I launched 4 videos. We've had this problem in the past where people are not getting notified. We've had subscribers that lose their subscribership. Like there's one guy, Mike, who seems to resubscribe like every week. And before that, we had other people that were resubscribing like every day. So sometimes YouTube goes through updates and it will kick people off the platform. It'll move your notifications. It'll remove your subscribership for whatever reason. Don't know. So if you guys want notifications on, if you want to know when videos are dropping, please turn on the notification setting. I've never seen videos do that badly before, but I contacted YouTube today to try to get it figured out to see if something's up, because it doesn't make any sense. But we'll keep popping them. And yesterday there was a great interview with Terrell Williams. I don't know if anyone's really had a chance to watch it. I hope you guys did, because listening to him speak, one, I love how he speaks. I love how he ends his sentences. He's got that OG in him. I tell you, it's different. I'm excited about what he is going to bring to this defensive line and what he sees in our guys already. He said that Aleem McNeil, entering what is his 4th season, is still a young player. And what he means by that is maturity-wise, from a football perspective, there's a lot more there. There's a lot more room to grow. If he can get another 10%, 15% out of Aleem McNeil this year, that is going to be destructive. It is going to change the game. So did either of you guys have a chance to listen to or watch Terrell Williams' video by chance?
Watch the whole thing this morning.
All right. Let me play a clip. I'm going to bring him in. I don't know if I have it set up right, but let me play a clip of Terrell Williams here. Let's listen to him speak for just a moment.
Let's see how.
All right, so I love this. He was asked a question if he was more teddy bear than I forget the question now, but he's asked if he was more teddy bear with his players, right? And this was his
walk and the way that they play football. That'll come from us in this building.
So are you more teddy bear than tough love? How would you describe yourself as a coach?
Let's see how teddy bear I am when we put pads on. Like we'll figure that out quickly.
That's all I wanted to show you guys. Like, this guy is about it. He is. I love how he ends his sentences. He says, we'll see who these guys are when, pads come on now. He always ends with a now or you see, or it's just the way he ends it. I don't know. It just gets you more excited to listen to the guy. But I'm seeing a big difference here already. Just speech does a lot for me. I mean, visuals does a lot for me for whatever reason. I pick up on a lot of the psychological cues. And this guy, that he has it. Like, we should be extremely excited as Lions fans that he is a part of this team. And he did say throughout this video that part of the reason why he joined the Lions, not so much because of his relationships, but the roster and looking at the roster and how deep this roster was. So extremely excited for him. I have a feeling, though, that DJ Reader was his pick. I don't know what you think, Chef, but do you think that DJ Reader was probably Terrell Williams' pick to bring in?
100%. I mean, as a defensive line coach, how would you not want to coach a guy like DJ Reader? So I did have a chance to go through the whole thing. I went through all of them, actually. I didn't get to the offensive ones, but the defensive ones, I did go through all of them. Very, very insightful stuff there.
Yeah, very insightful. Eric, what was your takeaway yesterday on Coach Williams?
Oh, I loved it. And the way he talks, and he's saying that it really doesn't matter what they're doing right now with no pads on. He can't wait until they get the pads on. Then he'll really see what these guys can do. And he's super excited to see the pads come on. Well, so am I. I can't wait for training camp.
Yeah, training camp's going to be big this year. He had also mentioned some things about Broderick Martin, and they were trying to make comparisons. And the one thing that he didn't want to do, so some of the media people there, they wanted to make comparisons. Like, have you seen, similar body type, body size, similar progression? And the first thing he said was, I'm not going to make comparisons, with these guys. And, he also drew upon something else too, which I don't know if it was a shot at, all the creators out there doing Lions media, or he did mention the journalist, that, these guys need to listen to the coaches, not us, not the journalists, but the coaches. And they're going to be the people that identify who they are as players. That some of these players listen too intently on what others have to say about them and take it to heart. And that could really ruin their career because it gets into their head. And sometimes it's tough to get it out. I mean, I think everybody understands that when you're negative about somebody, it can end up hurting someone, right? Not just their feelings, but it can hurt their psyche and how they perform. And, it can really, you can live in their head. And that's why I try to be as positive as possible, about the Lions, because you never know who's watching or who's listening. But I will be critical, right? I mean, I have to do my job when we see things, but at least what I think is my job. But I think that it's also beneficial if we're more positive about our guys as much as possible, but realistic. Can't be drinking the Kool-Aid too much. Anything you guys want to add any of that? I'm going to jump into Aiden real quick and what he said about Aiden. It was also done in a video yesterday. So if you visit the Grinder video, it's exactly what Terrell Williams called Aiden Hutchinson. So before I move on to that, anything you guys want to add?
Yeah, being positive is what you want to do, but sometimes you can't be. But that's just it's the world that we live in. I mean, we have to. I stopped counting how old I was once I started seeing NFL players come in, and I'm like, dang, I used to be younger than that guy. Now I'm so much older than that guy. So he's living in the social media world where everything that he does is on social media.
Yeah. Thankfully,
And
we didn't
so,
go through that.
yeah, I mean, that I think that would have been terrible for us to go through. So, I mean, having kids and understanding like how much they value it, and I'm like, it's not a real place, just turn it off. But that's just not part of how they were brought up. So it's tough, it's difficult. So you're absolutely right.
Just so we keep things sprinting this morning, I'll go top to bottom today just to keep it top view, bottom view. So if I ask a question, we'll hit top then bottom. Just so we know what kind of order we're in today. So Eric, what do you want to add to that? Anything?
Yeah. So he was talking about Hutch and how much more potential he has other than what he's already done. And he was saying that Hutch could be so much more, and that it really does rely on who's on the other side of him. So they really haven't had that other piece on the other side of Hutch yet. And he was really excited that now he thinks they do with Davenport and Betts and some of these other guys. And I really liked hearing what he had to say about the other side of the line, not just talking about Hutch the whole entire time.
Yeah, he didn't name the defensive ends. I think what he was speaking to, and what I wrote down from his actual quote was, I've coached some really good players, and those players, if they're honest, will admit that they need other people. And then he went on to say that Hutch has been unbelievable this offseason, and I think he's made huge strides from the time that I've arrived to where we are now. But it's not me, it's him studying tape. It's him asking questions. You know, everybody sees this big, tall 97 with long arms. By the way, Coach Williams, he doesn't have long arms. I just want to throw that out there. And Mr. Michigan and all this other stuff. But what you don't see is the time that this guy puts in. And he's constantly asking questions and studying other players and working on his craft. And he is an extremely coachable player. Like, I love the guy because of what he's like, what he's about. He's about he's not about the glamour and the glitz. He's just a grinder. And, you know, we need a lot more guys that have that mentality. And I think, to what you were saying, I think what he was saying is, to play, you know, in the NFL, you can't do it by yourself. You do need help, right? Whether it's coming from the interior, from Davenport, you know, on the other side of the line, or your cornerbacks. I mean, he has a plethora now of really high caliber players to work with, not only on the defensive line, but the defensive line, the cornerbacks, I mean, the DB, they all have to work together, right? They're all part of this defense that draws upon what each other is doing. And I think the biggest thing that he said yesterday that really resonated with me, and I don't think he was calling Aiden out, but I kind of did, because I've seen what Aiden has done the last couple of years. He mentioned that when guys get too deep, right? They run, they use speed, they get too deep, they get beyond the line, you know, they get behind the quarterback. Well, you need another guy on the other side that can crash down the line. That's exactly what I've been saying for the last couple of years with Hutch is, you know, sometimes he doesn't set the edge and he gets too deep and he gets himself out of the play. And then it opens up what, you know, Coach Williams said is a seam. And that seam allows the quarterback to sneak through and get, you know, off that edge and upfield for 20, 30 yards, which we saw quite a bit. And during Hutchinson's rookie season, there was over 700 yards given up in run plays from the quarterback and the running back that came through Hutch's edge and containment zone within the first 10 games. And that's all because he was too excited, I think. I think Hutch was just too much. You know, he was just trying to get too deep, too quick, and didn't set the edge. But he could do that if you have a guy that can crash down the line and cut off the quarterback before he gets an opportunity to hit the seam. So now if you go back and listen to some of the times where I've been critical about Hutch, it's because that's what I was seeing, was that we just, you know, we were missing something, and Hutch just needed to kind of sit back just a little bit. Now, I'm not his coach, but this is just my opinion, right? That if you just sat back a little bit, maybe some of those plays wouldn't have happened. But if we did have somebody on the other side of the line that could have crashed down, Hutch could have done whatever he wanted. Whatever he was doing would have been fine. So it is inspiring to see that he recognizes these things and he's going to fix it. So, Chef, what do you want to comment on that?
The fact that, yeah, he's just a super high motor guy. You know, sometimes you just have to tamp that down. There have been a lot of over pursuers, and I'm going to bring up a name, and it's not going that far back. We're talking about Lions legends. This guy is not a legend. His name is Ernie Sims. Ernie Sims was the king of over pursuing. So I don't think Hutch is on that level, But if you don't tamp it down, you can get to that level. And I think Hutch is doing a pretty good job just developing every single year. And the fact that Terrell Williams was talking about, he's always asking questions. So he's still a sponge. And the other thing that to touch on that Terrell Williams said earlier was that even if you are a great player, he still looks at you as a developmental player because you still have things to develop. You are still developing things. You're never a finished product until you leave the game.
That's such a great point. And I want to come back and touch on that. Eric, what do you want to add to the conversation here about Hutch and pursue?
Just that earlier in his whole first year and the first half of last year, Hutch really wasn't that great at setting the edge, and he really came along that second half of the year, I thought, setting the edge, and we were screaming at the TV, set the edge, set the edge, set the edge, and then boom, off goes, the quarterback
of the field.
Yeah, and it's like, come on, let's just stay home. Just stay home. I'd scream it all the time at the TV. Just stay home. And in the second half of the season in the playoffs, he did. He stayed home. And I really liked that he wasn't just trying to get the sack on every single play. You can't go for the sack on every single play. You just can't. Sometimes you got to stay home. I played defensive end in high school, and that was the biggest thing our coaches preached to us was stay home, stay home, stay home. If it's there, go for the sack, but otherwise stay home because they're just going to go zipping right past you because you went too far in.
In the wise words of Adam Sandler, why can't you just go home? Just go home. So look, Aiden's a very powerful, exciting, explosive player. And last year, when you talk about him setting the edge and finally staying home, I literally jumped out of my chair on one play where I saw Hutch starting to drive to the backfield and stopped. And then he kind of, shimmied to his left and then backed up and put himself in position. I'm like, oh my goodness, like we're getting it. We're getting there. We're dialing it in. And again, I'm not like some crazed, lunatic, like I don't know everything about the defensive side of the ball. Like I'm not a coach like Terrell Williams, but you recognize things. I mean, some of these things that are just, football 101 that you understand. Hutch has made leaps and bounds. I want to touch back on what you said, Chef. So talking about developmental players, and he had a very great statement yesterday that some players get labeled as a developmental project. And that should not be a knock on these guys. If anything, they should wear that badge of honor. Because coming into the league, like Broderick Martin was a developmental project. He said it doesn't matter what round you're selected in. Everyone should be developing, right? Everyone should be getting better. To your point, they're never a finished product. And what he was trying to say here is that Broderick Martin coming in as, and he didn't use Broderick's name, coming in as a developmental project is not a bad thing. Like sometimes you just have players that have to develop. And that's great down the line because as they get better and better and better, and then, they finally are needed. Like, was Broderick Martin really needed last year? Maybe. We had players that were healthy scratches like Isaiah Buggs. I mean, guys that they could play at a high level. So maybe he really wasn't needed. He was brought in to develop, 2-3 seasons down the line so that they're looking at this, roster roulette. And at some point, hey, Broderick Martin's going to have to be plugged in at nose tackle. And he's got to be ready. Is that year 2? Is that year 3? Well, it's probably somewhere between that. Right now, we have DJ Reader and Ali McNeil. If Ali McNeil is not re-signed, that could be next year, where Broderick Martin is getting, a lot of the snaps. Now, he's not a defensive tackle. He's more of a nose tackle. So we have to define those two positions a little bit, right? I mean, a nose tackle is someone that's going to be more of a run stuffer. They're not going to be getting upfield on the quarterback as often, but he's going to utilize those big, long arms to try to eat up 2 gaps. And that's what you're trying to get out of DJ Reader. I mean, that's exactly what he does, but I think DJ just has a little bit more in the gas tank. When he presses that pedal, he can get upfield. Ali McNeil is more of your pass rushing defensive tackle, and there's a lot more that Williams thinks that he's going to be able to get out of him. So Broderick Martin won't be able to take over for Ali McNeil, but he can play side by side with DJ Reader in some of these bigger fronts, goal line situations where they're definitely running the ball. So we'll see what happens. Only time will tell. But great stuff, you guys. I encourage you, go watch the media availability yesterday. A lot of great information in there. Any of you guys want to add to that before we kick off Barry Sanders?
Let's get to Barry, man.
All right,
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
All right, let's do Barry. All right, so let me get a couple of things off my screen. And if you remind me, if we have more time here at the end, Lions post mini camp defensive depth chart. I think it's starting to make a little bit more sense. We'll talk about that too. So Barry Sanders. I mean, clearly there's a big argument here. Who was the best running back ever in the NFL? I don't think that there's one. Well, I'm sure there's a couple, but I don't think that there's really that many Lions players that would put another running back above Barry Sanders. So I'm going to start with that first. With all of the running backs that have come through the league, past, present, recently retired, Hall of Famers, any legend that you can think of, where is Barry in your top 5? Chef?
That's not even a question, man. He's top 1. There is no top 5. There is, how they have the Mahomes tier right now? They have Mahomes, he's in the tier of his own, and then there's everybody else. That's Barry for me. Now I didn't get to see Jim Brown play, and I get it and I understand, but I submit to you that Jim Brown was playing against baggers, plumbers, electricians, like actual electricians. Okay. And he was just bigger, stronger, faster. So
what's a bagger?
A bagger, when you go to the grocery store and
a grocery bagger, I got you.
Yeah. I mean, they don't really have them too much anymore because now everything is self-checkout. But
right,
those are the guys he was playing against. And Barry Sanders was playing against guys that they were coming into the part of the NFL where you didn't need to have a second job if you played football,
Eric,
so
can I imagine where you're going to put Barry?
Yeah. number one, and nobody's even close to number 2. Maybe, Walter Payton, number 2, but he played in a different era. Barry came in and just took the lead by storm right from the beginning all the way to the end, and no one has ever done that. That I can think of, that they came in as a rookie and were the best running back in the league all the way for 10 years and was the best running back every single year, every single time. Nobody was better. The entire time he was here, he was either an all-pro or a Pro Bowler every single year. Nobody's done that. Nobody even came close.
So I think there may have been.
Really?
There may have been a season, and I would have to look it up. There may have been a season where I think Emmitt Smith had more yards than Barry in one season. Is that, Chef, can you remember?
I mean, it's possible, but Barry did it for 10 straight years.
10 straight years, yeah. 10 straight
He's
years.
the only running back in the history of the NFL to average 1,500 plus yards in 10 straight years.
Yeah. So I think there was one season, though. I think there was one where he didn't have the rushing title. There might have been more, actually.
Yeah.
But so anyway, Gil Brandt, this blows my mind. Okay, so Gil Brandt obviously has been around quite a bit. As a matter of fact, I don't even know if he's alive anymore. Best running backs ever on his list. Take a wild shot at where Barry Sanders is.
3.
Eric?
I'm going to say 4 on his list.
All right, so you got Jim Brown, Walter Payton, Gale Sayers, Bo Jackson, LaDainian Thomason, Eric Dickerson, and then Barry Sanders.
Smoking crack.
So look, I get it. Like Bo was electric. I mean, he was great, but he didn't play 10 seasons in the NFL. You're out. Eric Dickerson, another fantastic running back. He did play just 10 seasons, I think. 13,259 rushing yards for him in his career, 90 touchdowns. Hell of a running back. I wouldn't put him above Barry. I mean, just the stats alone, you can't put him above Barry. And then LaDainian Thompson. I mean, yes, he was exciting to watch, but again, just the stats alone. The only thing that Tomlinson had over, most of these running backs was 145 rushing TDs. I mean, he scored in bunches, and 17 reception TDs. Bo Jackson, there's no way on any earth you could ever have Bo Jackson. I mean, in the top 10 maybe, but he had 2,700 yards rushing his whole entire career. He played 3 seasons, 16 TDs. How can you put him above Barry Sanders? Gale Sayers, same thing. Less than 5,000 yards rushing, 40 touchdowns, 39 touchdowns rushing. No way. Absolutely no way you can put him above Barry Sanders. You could make an argument based on stats, Walter Payton, but I don't know if you could make an argument on stats for Jim Brown. It would be very close. So stats don't tell you the whole story. We know that. I mean, the eye test is part of it. I don't think there was ever a running back more elusive than Barry Sanders. And I put this out there before, and I hope someone picks up this project. Go watch every Barry Sanders game. It'll probably take you a couple years. Count up the yards he ran east and west. And I bet you it was more than north and south.
Probably 20,000.
Yeah, there was plays that he probably would run 30 yards east and west before he went 3 yards north. So he was incredible to watch. So many ankles have been broken. It's not even funny. Matter of fact, there should be some sort of a foundation for the Broken Ankle Foundation for Barry Sanders. So, all right, a look back at Barry Sanders. Let's dive right into it. This is coming from my article that was published in April 3rd, 2023. Barry Sanders, widely considered one of the greatest running backs in the NFL history. His incredible athletic ability over 10 NFL seasons was on display each and every Sunday where Sanders lit up the field. He made defenders look silly and was the reason why highlight reels began. His career with the Detroit Lions was nothing short of spectacular. In the new series of Lions Legends, back then it was a new series by Rocked On Sports Media, we're going to dive into Sanders' early life and illustrious career in Detroit. I plan to show you a glimpse of the man on the field and off the field, his impressive stats, and the awards earned throughout his time in the NFL. In his early career, Sanders played college football for Oklahoma State Cowboys. In addition to Sanders coming aboard in 1986, Oklahoma State already had Thurman Thomas, and he was entering his junior season. So during Sanders' freshman year, he didn't really get a lot of playing time as Thurman Thomas was the lead back. Sanders didn't see any action in 8 games that season, and he finished with only 325 yards, 2 touchdowns, and averaged 23.7 yards per return as a kick returner. That's right, he returned kicks in college. In 1987, Sanders was still stuck behind Thurman Thomas, but seen much more time on the field. He played in 11 games, ran the ball 105 times for 603 yards, averaging just around 6 yards per carry. Finally, his junior season, 1988. Sanders is finally the starter for the Cowboys, and did he ever prove to everyone why the head coach of Oklahoma, their rival, Barry Switzer, was so afraid of facing Sanders if Thomas ever went down in seasons past. Sanders had arguably the greatest individual season in college football history. In 11 games, he rushed for 2,628 yards with 37 touchdowns, winning the Heisman Trophy. Before I get to him landing in Motor City, what do you guys have to say about that crazy junior season there for Oklahoma State? Jeff?
I already knew about it. I mean, I'm telling you, this guy, Barry Sanders, I call him my football father. And I can get into that a little bit later if we have some time. I got some stories about Barry Sanders and my trajectory in life. So yeah, I knew all that information, had all that information.
Eric?
Yeah. So if any of you guys get a chance, watch the Barry documentary that's on Amazon Prime. Fantastic. Bye Bye Barry. Oh my God, it was so good. And it touched on some of this stuff. And he was just incredible. There was nothing like it. All you could do is sit back and watch. Absolutely incredible.
So Barry Switzer, there's some stuff that's still floating out there on YouTube. But there was times in discussions that Barry Switzer had with people around the league, in the NC2A and even as a pro, in the NFL, where, like I said in that opening statement, he was nervous about Barry Sanders. He knew what Barry Sanders could be. And obviously it happened, at one point when Barry, obviously came into Oklahoma and completely destroyed him. So the legend moves on to the Motor City, and that's up next. So Barry Sanders was drafted by the Detroit Lions with the 3rd overall pick in the 1989 draft. He quickly established himself as one of the most electrifying players in the league, taking his first NFL carry for 18 yards at the Pontiac Silverdome. I will never forget watching this play, listening to the crowd and how excited they were, calling for Barry. And then he finally gets in the game. And again, if you go back and do watch some of that documentary of Bye Bye Barry, some of this stuff is in there. They talk about it, they show it. And I'm so happy that they kept a lot of this stuff alive right through video, because you can go back and relive some of these moments. Now, I was just 9 years old when this was going on, and my family had season tickets since like the 60s. So my first game was at the Silverdome when I was like 4 years old. And I talked about that in another article, but he finished his rookie season with 1,470 yards, breaking the Lions' single season rushing record. Not one person ever knew or imagined this was just the beginning. Sanders never looked back, quickly becoming one of the most dominant running backs of all time. The most impressive feat of his remarkable career, however, came in 1997 when he rushed for a league best 2,053 yards. He added another 305 yards on 33 catches and finished with 2,358 combined yards. Throughout his 10-year career, and this is what we were talking about earlier, Sanders rushed for over 1,000 yards in each of every season and selected to the Pro Bowl in each of every season for 10 years straight. Sanders was so dynamic, quick, twitchy, ran with very low pad level. He shifted gears quickly to top speed with the ability to stop on a dime, making his jump cuts, his spin moves, and directional changes so mesmerizing that defenders were often left with their mouths hanging wide open, just watching, as they knew they could not stop him. It was like watching the defense catch flies with chopsticks. I'm sure you know what movie reference that is. Or grasping at ghost, as Sanders simply made everyone miss and look silly. He rarely, if ever, went down from one defender, often taking 2 or 3 with him, and several missing every time he touched the ball. Before I move on to some stats, any comments, any memories on some of his games?
Man. Do you guys know the chicken story?
Do not know the chicken story.
The chicken story is that the Minnesota Vikings
Are you talking the chicken before the egg or the egg before the chicken? Like which chicken story?
The Minnesota Vikings released chickens in practice to try to simulate the movement patterns of Barry Sanders. They were chasing a chicken in practice to try to get Barry Sanders. And this is one of the things that I say, like, I love Jahmyr Gibbs. I love him. I call him the electrician. He's electrifying. He's not an actual electrician, a contractor, right? He's not a plumber. No, the electrician, something like a magical electric person. Well, whatever. But he's not Barry Sanders. There is no Barry Sanders. There never will be another Barry Sanders. Some of the things that he does, some of the cuts, maybe they are Sanders-esque. I think Bijan Robinson has some of the start and stop ability that Barry Sanders had, but to get Barry Sanders is Captain Planet. Okay, you guys remember Captain Planet? With our powers combined, you have to combine about 5 different running backs to create one Barry Sanders. So there's just never has been, and I don't think there ever will be anyone like him.
I would agree with that. Eric, any memories, any game stories, anything you can say about Barry during his career?
Oh yeah, a couple of them. So one of my favorites was the game against the Jets when Barry went over 2,000 yards and we got flagged for being too loud. The crowd did. That was awesome. Go back and watch that game. It's an incredible game. So much fun to watch. And Aaron Glenn was our defensive coordinator. He was playing against Barry in that game.
I remember.
And I think it was against him that he missed the tackle when Barry hit the 2000. And the other memory I have is the game against Tampa Bay in Tampa Bay, where Barry lost his shoe and he still ran all the way down the sidelines for I think 53 yards, and he scored a touchdown with no shoe. That was awesome. I loved it.
Didn't that shoe go missing?
I don't know.
I thought that there was a story or something about that shoe that obviously that shoe, is worth a ton of money.
Yeah,
I thought that Herman Moore's got it. Yeah, or something like that. That's funny, man. So let's dive into some stats. I mean, and this is where Barry really separated himself. And this is why so many fans, I think, were angry at Barry. And the reason why, I want to touch on this, and I'm glad that the bye-bye Barry thing came out, because there were so many fans that were so angry when he left. He just hung it up. He just kind of lost his love of the game. And there was so much going on back then. There's so many issues with the team. And just watch Bye-Bye Barry to really grasp what he was trying to tell us. But just 1 or 2 more seasons for this guy, and his stats would have never been touched by anybody. I mean, I think it took Emmitt Smith at least 2, if not 3 more seasons after Barry hung it up to eclipse what Barry, had put down. So Barry Sanders' stats are simply overwhelming. There's too many to list. But if you look below, and I'll read it, if you look below on this article, but if you read it, or I'll read it, there's a full spectrum of just how amazing Sanders' stats really were. He finished his career with 15,269 rushing yards, 99 touchdowns. 99. Who wants to finish on 99 touchdowns? Which ranks him as the 4th all-time, at this time of writing this article, leading rusher in NFL history at the time, like I said, of this published piece. Sanders' career averaged 99.8 rushing yards per game. Again, just one more game, and he could have had triple-digit, averages. Second highest in NFL history, next to Jim Brown. He was also a threat as a receiver, which, he wasn't utilized enough as a receiver, but he finished his career with 352 receptions for 2,921 yards, 10 touchdowns. Would have loved to have seen more from him, but loved watching him run, right? Sanders now is a brand ambassador for the Detroit Lions. He's really stepped into a role that has been so enlightening to so many, and such a good, positive role that the Lions are bringing back some of these legends. And finally, like Calvin Johnson is back with the team and doing a very similar role like Barry Sanders, and kind of being the face of the team, which Barry has been now for many seasons, even after he left, right? It took him a while to come back, but he's kind of been the face of the brand for a while. After 2 decades from his abrupt departure and retirement from football, the legendary running back and Pro Football Hall of Famer Barry Sanders has returned to the Motor City as the new brand ambassador for the Detroit Lions. He established this role since 2018. It was not always easy for Sanders after he left the team. Oftentimes, fans were not as kind immediately after he retired, holding on to some sort of a grudge against Barry. And this is what I was saying, like in the, the Bye-Bye Barry video or documentary. It was, I guess, I don't know how you could be upset or angry, but there were so many fans that were invested into Barry Sanders and the team, and just wanting the team to be good, and fighting every single season to remain a Lions fans. I think that we've all been there. We've all been through, very hard times being a Lions fan. And I think that's why there was so much animosity towards Barry, is like, we were so close so many times, and Barry was the only thing that fans were hanging on to remain a fan, because everything else was kind of gone to crap, so to speak. But those days are now long gone, as Barry is definitely beloved by the fans. Welcomed with standing ovations and lots of cheers inside Ford Field whenever he makes a presence. The Hall of Famer is beloved by the Detroit Lions organization, which he always was, who has plans to erect a statue. Again, this is prior to the statue going up in 2024, which is now there for everybody to enjoy. And I have to say, man, they knocked it out the park. That is probably one of the most momentous, iconic statues I've seen in a long time. It's a very particular run in kind of a stance, where he's I don't know how to call it or how to say it, but he's in, a stance that everyone remembers. Everybody remembers that stance in that game. Barry may not be an official, in an official football role or a front office, role for the team, but his being in the building and the front man for the Detroit Lions is just as valuable. His role is more defined as marketing for the Detroit Lions, where he is included and attends a lot of fan-driven events, alumni games, community outreach events, fundraisers, foundations, suite appearances. What used to be the Taste of the Lions event, which I've gone to a few times. They don't do it anymore that I know of, and travels often with the team. Sanders is the official spokesperson for the Detroit Lions, and this is what he had to say. It's definitely nice to be back. After the first few years of being retired and there not being much communication, Sanders said this in an interview with the AP, Associated Press. He said, so certainly just being able to be involved with certain things that the team is doing from a community outreach standpoint and the sort of thing for me, it's just great. Just being able to be around the game a little bit more and certainly around the Lions family a little more for me is meaningful. So I do appreciate that. I'm going to get into awards and then career highlights and awards and some more stats. Anything you guys want to add at this point about his brand, about his brand ambassador role? I mean, anything that you guys want to add as far as how do you feel like his role is defined now and how important it is, not only for Lions fans, but the team and even the rookies now that are coming in to get an opportunity to spend some time with them?
Well, I'll go back just a little bit. That stance, I like to call it the upper body going one way and the lower body going another way. And I know he did that to John Lynch, and he just absolutely stole John Lynch's soul. Because John Lynch was like, I don't know which way to reach here. Do I go for the top or do I go for the bottom? And as far as when he retired, for me, it was Bobby Ross. It was the organization. It was the team. It was there was no blame to go for Barry. Obviously, I was heartbroken, but yeah, it was all Bobby Ross's fault. You don't give Barry Sanders. You don't do what Barry Sanders doesn't feel comfortable doing. Like that is. You come in, you start coaching Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan tells you what he likes. You go, okay, Mike. And you give it to him. And there's no ego for the head coach, but Bobby Ross had one and he didn't have a lot of opportunities after that. But his role as the brand ambassador, if you come in to play for the Detroit Lions and you have the most iconic player in the history of the franchise greeting you, you can pick his brain. Like, I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs got picked up at the airport by freaking Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson. Imagine, like, he's a quiet guy, didn't say too much, but his insides had to be going like totally crazy. He had to keep his cool and all these things. But for them the young players to be able to get a chance to see this legend and to speak to him and to be able to get his phone number and to just, hang out with Barry Sanders. That's fantastic, man. That's like a 1 in a million type of opportunity.
Yeah.
So
I think that
Eric.
Barry coming in and being the ambassador, he is really embracing this role, kind of like he did when he played, and it's finally clicking for him. Because I don't think it really clicked as being an ambassador for the first little bit, because there was all that tension between him and the team and, giving money back and, William Clay Ford and everything that went on at the end was kind of ugly. And now it's not ugly anymore. It's 20 years later. And now he's able to be the face of the franchise again. And he's really loving it. The fans are loving it. And bringing him back into the fold like this is just an amazing experience for everyone, including the rookies that come in. Like Chef said, Gibbs got picked up at the airport by him. I thought that was so awesome that he gets to meet Barry and Calvin on his first day as a Lion. Getting picked up by two of the greatest to ever do it at their positions and gets to pick their brains if he wants. I know he's a really quiet kid and he doesn't talk much. I got to meet him down at the draft there, and you got to pry words out of the kid. He really does not talk very much. He's very, very shy, which is kind of strange. You're a running back in the NFL and you're a shy kid.
I think a lot of players are shy.
Yeah.
You know,
Harry
they
was
they
shy
might
at the
be,
beginning.
yeah, they might be extremely great players on the field, but sometimes your personality is just a little bit differently, you know, or a little bit different, I think, with people. It's kind of different. Like, you know, when you're playing football, you're not communicating with those guys on the field. You're trying to knock the crap out of them.
Yep.
And that's your communication, you know? So I think as he's warmed up, though, I think that you kind of seen Jahmyr Gibbs kind of open up a little bit. He kind of, like Jamison Williams was the same way. Like he was always quiet and reserved. And I think now you're starting to see him kind of open up a little bit. He's having fun. And I think as a rookie, there's just so much pressure on these guys, especially picked at number 12 overall, right? Both of them. Lots expected, you know, from these guys. And I haven't had the chance to meet Jahmyr Gibbs. Maybe sometime in the future. But I think that when I do get a chance to finally meet these guys, I got a lot of questions, man. I got a lot of questions. All right, so awards. And Chef, I sent you a message on your phone, by the way. Awards. So Barry Sanders, dominance on the field, recognized by the NFL and its fans. He was selected to the Pro Bowl in every one of the 10 NFL seasons, which I mentioned earlier, and was a 4-time first-team All-Pro selection. In 1997, he was awarded the NFL Most Valuable Player Award, MVP, after rushing for over 2,000 yards in a single season. Sanders was also inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2004, which cemented his place as one of the greatest players in NFL history. Not greatest running backs, greatest players in NFL history. In conclusion, Barry Sanders' career with the Detroit Lions was nothing short of remarkable. His impressive stats and numerous awards are a testament to his talent and dedication to the sport of football. Sanders' contributions to the NFL will always be remembered, and he will forever hold a place in our hearts of Lions fans as one of the greatest players to ever wear a Detroit uniform. Despite his brief career, I call it brief, right? 10 years is not brief. Sanders, because he could have played so much longer. Sanders' impact on the game of football will be felt for generations to come. Now, there are some foundations, which I forgot to write down. Let me grab them here, because I usually like to tell everybody about the foundations. But if you visit barrysanders.com, I believe all of his foundations are linked in there. Anything that he's doing, his social community events, or any foundations that he's doing I believe are all located in barrysanders.com. If not, we will find some more information to be able to put that information out there. But Sanders Family Foundation is a nonprofit. I can't tell you exactly what they're doing, but there are some things that he's always involved in. So shout out to Barry and everything that he's been doing. Let's get into some career highlights and awards. This is a very long list. Very, very long list. NFL MVP, 97. 2 times NFL Offensive Player of the Year, 94 and 97. NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year, 89. 6-time first team All-Pro, 89 through 91, 94, 95, 97. 4-time second team All-Pro, 92, 93, 96, 98. So he was an All-Pro in every single season. 6 times as a first team, 4 times as a second team. 10 times Pro Bowl, all 10 seasons. 4 times NFL rushing yards leader. So there's our answer there. He had, eclipsed he was the rushing leader for 4 seasons out of 10. NFL rushing touchdowns leader, 91. 1990s all-decade team. NFL 100th anniversary all-time team. Pro Football Writers Association all-rookie team, 89. 2 times Burt Bell Award, 91, 97. Pride of the Lions. Detroit Lions 75th anniversary team. Detroit Lions all-time team. Detroit Lions number 20, retired. Heisman Trophy, 88. Maxwell Award, 88. Walter Camp Award, 88. Big 8 Offensive Player of the Year, 88. Unanimous All-American, 88. Second team All-American, 87. First team All-Big 8, 88. Oklahoma State Cowboys Ring of Honor. Finished his career 352 receptions, 2,921 yards, 10 receiving TDs, 15,269 yards on the ground, 99 rushing touchdowns, averaging 5 yards per carry. What an amazing man. Amazing career. in my opinion, to answer the first question of the day, where does Barry belong on the list of the best running backs ever? And you're right. He is number one, in my opinion. And it's not because I'm jaded as a Detroit Lions fan. It's not because I'm biased. But I think that when you look at the culmination of his career and what he dealt with as being a Detroit Lion, there was nobody that could have done what he did during that period with that team better than what Barry Sanders did. And if you would have transplanted him to the Dallas Cowboys offensive line, forget about it. Emmitt Smith, I mean, those numbers that he put up, could you imagine what Barry would have done behind that offensive line? Best offensive line in football for a long time. Amazing career. So super excited. We got a chance to touch on Barry today. What else you guys want to dive in today? And what are your final comments on Barry Sanders?
Well, I would like to share a story about Barry Sanders in my life, if I could.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do.
So, as I said, I call Barry Sanders my football father. And it has a little bit to do with the fact that my father lied to me and told me he was the same height as Barry Sanders. I thought instantly that I was going to be the same height as Barry Sanders. So I dedicated the early part of my life to becoming an NFL football player. I went to two different high schools. The first high school I went to, the coaches called me Little Barry. I didn't ask them to do that, but when I started running the football, I started running as if I was Barry Sanders, to the point where my father was my first Little League coach. And I started playing organized football when I was 9 years old. And he made me be a quarterback. And I was like, why are you making me be the quarterback? I want to be a running back like Barry Sanders. And he said, because when you run the football, you don't hit the hole. I said, Barry Sanders doesn't hit the hole, so I'm not hitting the hole, right? Now, obviously, Barry Sanders will hit a hole when a hole was there, but I think I was just unnecessarily dancing around trying to be like Barry Sanders. So that's just been, my running style was patterned after his. Obviously, I wasn't like 100% like him, but just stopping on a dime, just, the jukes, breaking ankles, that was what I loved. I literally studied Barry Sanders. I would just watch him intently. I remember my father sneaking me into a game to watch Barry Sanders against the Cincinnati Bengals at the Silverdome. He had a friend. He was a Jamaican man named Mr. Sangster, Larry Sangster. And I thought they had tickets, but I later realized that they did not have tickets. So I was able to go and watch Barry Sanders as a young kid. And that was just like the highlight of my young life. So yes, Barry Sanders to me is like untouchable. And there's the reason that he's untouchable is because the body of work speaks for itself. I don't think if you put his body of work up against anybody else, I think that you will find that Gil Brandt has a drinking problem.
Allegedly. Hold on here. He's being facetious. Allegedly. Careful.
Allegedly, he has a drinking problem, but I do believe he may have been drinking while he made this list because it's absolutely ridiculous. Allegedly, it's possible.
Got to be careful.
Anything's possible. Yeah. So that's pretty much it, man. Barry Sanders, I've never been starstruck before. If I were to meet Barry Sanders, I might be. Might be. So that's it.
Awesome.
That's
man.
My Barry Sanders stuff.
It's a funny story.
Yeah.
Eric, you're up. Anything you want to share?
All right. So anybody that knows me really well knows that I love the Lions, but I hate the Packers even more than I love the Lions. Like, absolutely have hatred running through my blood for green and gold. I just cannot stand the Green Bay Packers. But I have to say, thank you to the Green Bay Packers for taking Tony Mandrich instead of taking Barry Sanders. So thank you, Packers. And you know what you can do, Packers. But yeah, just thank you for taking Tony Mandrich, one of the worst players ever, and letting us have Barry. Thank you very much. That's all I got to say about that.
Man, we are the bane to the Packers when it comes to drafting, man. I tell you, we have screwed them over so many times, but you know what? They screw themselves over.
It's their
To be
own
honest
fault.
with you. What's that?
It's their own fault.
It is, yeah. So let's dive into another one. Since we got a little bit of time here, I did another article on the men and women behind the curtain of the Detroit Lions, and I posted a link in here. So there's a link that's a link to the Barry Sanders article that I wrote is in the chat, and then prior to that is a link to my website, which has more articles. So if you want to spoil, some of the lives that we're going to do, you can read other articles. But I think that this is another one that I want to share this one today because it's a look back to how I saw the Lions developing and who the important people were behind the Lions and behind the curtain, the people that are, less talked about. And just the other day, Sheila Hamp has been regarded as like Michigander of the year. And I mean, that post that I put on Twitter has exploded. A lot of people got behind that for some reason, and rightfully so, because she really deserves it. But there's other people behind this team that are not recognized as often. So article, The Men and Women Behind the Curtain of the Detroit Lions. I wrote this March 24th, 2023. And first statement, man, build it and they will come. Since 2020, the Detroit Lions have taken on a new identity, injected a new vision, and began a complete transformation, one that is still evolving as each and every season passes. The recent success of the Lions organization cannot be measured by wins and losses alone. A successful football organization has wins on the field as much as they do off the field. The team behind the team is just as important as the one playing on Sundays. To support the new vision, the Lions organization dug deep, beginning with a systematic approach to tear everything down to the studs and rebuild from the ground up. This was not just the element on the field this time. It was everybody, every position, and involved a massive undertaking that the Lions have seemingly pulled off about 1 year sooner than expected. Now, mind you, this was written in March of 2023 before the season. This involved elevating every aspect of football operations, communicating with and evaluating each employee, contractor, and consultant, upgrading the talent on the field by establishing a new character identity that fits the team dynamic. They even evaluated the fans' experience at Ford Field, making a priority to upgrade the stadium environment, all the way down to the concessions. This was all done to transition the way football is done in Allen Park for the city of Detroit and the fans. So let me introduce you to some of the most amazing men and women behind the curtain of the Detroit Lions transformation. And first up is principal owner and chair Sheila Ford Hamp. To say the words, "it starts at the top," has often been overplayed when any company or franchise wishes to succeed in anything they set out to accomplish. In this case, those words couldn't be more of a factual and an accurate statement. On June 23, 2020, Sheila Ford Hamp succeeded her mother, Martha Firestone Ford, as principal owner and chair of the Detroit Lions. From 2014 to 2019, Mrs. Hamp served as one of the team's vice chairs during her mother's ownership. Shortly after taking control of the franchise, Mrs. Hamp had this to say: "My mother has inspired all of us since taking on leadership of the Lions over 6 years ago. She has been a tireless leader to our family, our team, and our community. Her smart decisions have given me a solid foundation to take the team forward." Now, under Sheila Hamp's leadership, the Lions have evolved tremendously. She brought a breath of fresh air to the team and has revived a once broken system in Allen Park to a thriving and competitive environment. This was no easy task, and to do it right, she knew that she would need help, leadership, and direction to take her plans, fiery competitive spirit, and ideas to the top in the NFL. And that's where, Vice President and GM Rod Wood kind of comes in, but I think he was already with the team for a few seasons anyway. maybe 5 or 6 seasons before, Sheila became the vice chair. So Detroit Lions team president and CEO Rod Wood, I'll talk about next. But anything you guys want to add to Sheila Hamp and anything that you can touch on as to why you feel that she's been so successful so quickly, and why no one else in her family could get it done.
I just think that she was the outlier in the family, man. That she understood that she doesn't know everything about football. But she knows how to get the people that know things about football. There was a thing where they hired an outside firm. I think Ernie Accorsi was part of that firm that was searching for, who wound up to be Brad Holmes and Dad Campbell. So I think she's just letting people do the jobs that they are supposed to do, and she's trusting the people, understanding that the people that she has in place are the right people. Her father just trusted any and everybody. Matt Millen, you want a job? Come on over here. You've never been a GM and you don't know too much about building a team. That's fine. We're just going to give you all the rope that we can give you. So I think just, and the biggest thing about Sheila, I think, is she just has a pulse of the city, man. That iconic Thanksgiving shot when she was up there in the press box with, well, not the press box, but the luxury suite, but she was up there in the luxury suite with her face in her hands. I think we were getting blown out by the Titans. Was it 45-10 at that time?
That was a Thanksgiving Day game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's when we knew. That's when we knew that the Quinn Trisha era, or error, as I like to call it, was coming to an end. So I think that with her finger on the pulse of the city and just being able to trust the people that she's hired, she's just been able to do an amazing job.
Yeah, she really has. Eric, what do you got to say?
Yeah, so Sheila, one of the best things she did was hire Chris Spielman right away. He's got a head for the game. He's got a head for business. So I've worked for multiple companies, mainly casinos, and I've seen they do the same thing as the Lions did. They always have their person that's in charge, their GM of their business. And they always bring in some guy with all this experience from somewhere else, and they never fit in. They always try to make things go their way. They come in and they try to be a dictator instead of trying to be a team player and do things in a way that everyone can get along and do it right. And then when you do get that right person come in, you get that GM that comes in that does a really good job, what happens is you have people in other positions that are bad apples. And what happens when you have a bushel of apples and you have one bad apple, it spreads to all the other apples and they all become bad. And that's what happens. So when you have a team like the Lions that had a coach that just was not fitting in, like Aubrey Pleasant or one of these other guys that they let go, they see it right away that, hey, you're a bad apple. We got to get this guy out of here. And they don't mess around. And that's what I like about this whole new regime. And what has changed is it starts at the top and it goes all the way to the bottom, that everyone has to be on the same page. Otherwise, and not everyone's going to fit into this mold. And that's fine. If you don't fit, then you don't stay.
Yeah, those are all great and valuable points. So question in the chat here, why has Sheila Hamp been so successful? I would love to hear from the people in the chat, your take on why you feel that she's been so successful, to Chef's point. She doesn't know everything about football. Now, she's been around football her entire life, right? It's been part of her family. It's been ingrained in, in her blood that ever since that she was a kid. She talks about that, and there's some really good interviews with her where she talks about that exact thing. Like it's something that she grew up with, going to all the games. She believed in Detroit, right? She believed in the team. she just knew that things had to be different. And I think that there was a couple of good points here in the chat too, where someone had said there's a difference between wanting to make money and wanting to win. And I apologize, I don't remember who wrote it in here. Oh, no, it's right there. It's Rick. It says there's a difference between wanting to make money and wanting to win in pro sports. Sheila wants to win. You know, I have no doubt in my mind that obviously she wants to make money, but at the same time, she wants to deliver a product to the fans, the city of Detroit, that they've never been given before. And she's doing just that. Into both of your points, I mean, it starts at the top, right? And she recognized that. So after, you know, the error, as Chef likes to say, of the Quinn Trisha error came to an end, I mean, Rod Wood stuck around, but she pretty much scrapped everything. And she had to find, you know, someone that she could lean on and someone that she could trust. And, you know, that's why, you know, not last season, but the season before, she went to the mic, you know, during a practice, week 6 or week 7, whatever it was, and told everybody, look, we've got the right people. I trust these people. Dan and Brad are doing fine. They're doing what they're supposed to do. We're getting there. You just got to trust in them a little bit longer. I don't see any changes that need to be made. Could you imagine if the toxicity of the fan base that still thrives would have had Brad and Dan fired? Because that's typically what happens. When the city puts too much pressure on ownership, they react. She didn't react. She held firm, and she knew that she was going to give it that old college try, right? And that, hey, I brought these people in to do a job. We're going to see this process through. And, you know, if the process isn't working, maybe there was a timetable on it. If it's not working by year 3, well, then maybe you have to readjust. But not only did she double down on the people that she brought in, she extended them. So clearly, last season was a very telling season as to why when you build something, it takes a little bit of time. But once that motor gets running, man, you just got to feed it some gas. And right now, the Lions are feeding gas into every aspect of this team and pressing that pedal to get us to the next level. So when they say trust in the process, you have to trust in the process. Fans, I get it. I mean, I'm a fan myself, right? I get it. I've been there. I've felt those things. That, are we really going to be different this time? You know, are things really going to change? Are we going to come out on the other side of this? Is it going to be any different than the last 6 coaches? And when you're 18 months into a new regime and you're not winning ball games, you kind of fall into the, you know, the old ways of, I don't think this is going to work. We need to make a change, as opposed to, no, that's not the answer all the time. Sometimes you have to give it time. The teams that are not successful in the NFL, and you could go look this up, I'm sure that there's some stats somewhere. The ones that constantly change their coaches, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, head coach, GMs, they're not successful. And the Lions have changed coaches consistently. Now, the ones that are successful that are changing coaches are because their coaches are getting elevated and moving on to new teams, but they're still finding great replacements, right? They're attracting the better, coaching trees, if you will, from around the league or from, the college ranks. So they're filling their pipeline with good people, which the Lions are doing right now. We've gotten better at every position, coaching, positional groups, you name it. So I know that was a long-winded retort there, but let's move on to Rod Wood. We good? So Lions team president and CEO Rod Wood oversees all football and business operations of the Lions organization and reports directly to the principal owner and chairwoman, Sheila Ford Hamp. Wood was originally appointed to the team on November 19th, 2015 as the former president and CEO of Ford Estates. Wood had familiarity with the Ford family's businesses and their business models. Rod Wood's masterful success in the business and global banking world made his hiring a very easy decision for the Lions organization. So when you look back at like contracts, right, and how the Lions are doing contracts right now, and they're really beneficial to the team. They're working for the team. I have a feeling that the team that Rod Wood has developed, right, the people that they have brought in that are in charge of, putting these contracts together largely comes from his experience, right, with banking, in the global markets and understanding money and how it all works. So his job is very important to what the Lions do. Now, he knew nothing about football, and he even told us that when he joined the team. He knew absolutely nothing about football, but he was going to take his education, his background, and apply it to the game of football and make it work. And I think it's working. Next up, Executive VP and General Manager Brad Holmes. Clearly, top GM in the league. Could you say he's the best? Potentially. I don't know yet. I think that he's definitely in the top 3. I couldn't even tell you another GM's name that's better than him. But I'm going to put him in the top 3 for right now until, he's able to finally win the coveted Lombardi, right? Holmes joined the Lions January 14th, 2021, after spending the previous 18 seasons with the LA Rams, 2003 to 2020. The nephew of former Lions first round pick, Luther Bradley. Interesting, relationship there, right? Holmes started as a public relations intern in 2003, then elevated to the director of college scouting by 2013. So he spent 10 years in public relations before he even started working on scouting. Now, he said he was always a scout. Like he always, worked on that, every single year. It's something that he loved doing. But it wasn't an official role for him. Now, for the next 8 seasons, Holmes ran the entire draft process leading up to the Rams Super Bowl season. Holmes' experience has provided him with an expert-level education as a talent evaluator. This is one of many skills and qualities that he possesses, and why the Lions are finally headed in the right direction. Again, I wrote this in March of 2023. Holmes' success in Detroit has been immediate. His clear direction and leadership have taken this team to new heights in a matter of 2 seasons. The Lions are once again an exciting team that has invigorated the fan base to really come alive. Before I move on to Chris Spielman, immediate thoughts on Brad Holmes.
You might as well just start calling Brad Holmes Salt Bay, because he's just cooking all the time. Brad Holmes is a remarkable man. I think his story just shows you how perseverance gets you to where you need to be, to where you're trying to go. I think there was something about him working at, I know it was a car company. Was he selling cars, or was he working at Hertz, like rental car or something like that? And then he finally was able to, get into an organization and just obviously started as a gopher, go for this, go for that, go get coffee, go do this, doing cut ups, and just worked his way up. And now he's the GM. And if he's not the best GM in the league right now, he is on his way. As far as the draft, I mean, he is you could call him a magician in the draft. I mean, he's just been able to get things to fall his way. I mean, Brad Holmes had something to do with 13 offensive players being picked in the first 13 picks, and we got Terrion Arnold. I mean, that was something. He did something there. So, just Brad Holmes is that dude, man. That's all I have to say about Brad Holmes.
Eric, before I get on to you, let me throw this out there. Last year in April of 2013, so before the season started, that would have been before the draft as well. So I can only imagine that Greg Rosenthal from Around the NFL podcast, how his decision making went into this article prior to the draft, and I could only imagine how much lower on the draft on this board that Brad Holmes would have been after taking a running back at 12, because everybody scathed him, right? And then to back that up with a linebacker, in the first round, like everybody thought he was nuts. So they had Howie Roseman as the best GM, Brett Veach from the Chiefs as number 2, Duke Tobin from the Bengals as number 3, Brandon Beane, Buffalo Bills as number 4, John Lynch, San Francisco 49ers as number 5, Les Snead, LA Rams as number 6, and then Brad Holmes at number 7. So, Eric, I'll take your comments now on Brad Holmes.
All right. So last year, Brad Holmes was voted the executive of the year, right?
Yep.
What's the first move he made when he got to Detroit? He put Stafford on a plane and gets Goff into Detroit, I about lost my mind, because Stafford was my favorite Lions player of all time up to that point, other than Barry. And it crushed me. And I was like, what is this guy doing? This guy's coming in. He's trading all this stuff. We get a couple of first round picks. I don't care. I didn't care. I wanted to keep Stafford. I wanted to see what could happen if we actually built a team around him. Well, now we know he could win a Super Bowl like he did with the Rams. They had a team around him. And, then they come in and he goes 3-13-1. And then he does these drafts where he's picking these guys that nobody's calling for, and taking a running back at number 12 overall and doing all this crazy stuff as a GM. And I'm just like, man, what is this guy doing? But now you sit back a year later and you look at the totality of what he's done. Man, is this guy a genius? He's getting it done, and he's ahead of the curve. Like Will and I had a conversation. I really think what Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell are doing is a form of Moneyball. I think they are coming up with a way to draft and coach a team that no one else is doing, that everyone else is going to copy. And you're already seeing it. Like you guys were saying, the first 13 people in the draft were all offensive players. Does that have anything to do with him taking Gibbs at number 12 overall? With him taking J-Mo number 12 overall? I don't know, but it sure feels like Brad Holmes is 2 steps ahead of everybody, and everybody else is back behind trying to copy him.
What's funny though is they throw him under the bus for all of these things that he's done. Taking Broderick Martin, trading up all these picks to take Broderick Martin. But what they don't see on the other side of that is who, like I said earlier, who is he going to be in 2 or 3 seasons? He's a developmental project, right? Giovanni Manu, developmental project. You bring this guy in because you can see what he has, these rare athletic gifts. He may not be on the field day one, but in 2 or 3 seasons when we, have to replace Zeitler, have to replace Glasgow, or Taylor Decker, is he going to be able to step into a role like that? And Brad Holmes believes in his coaching tree so much that he knows guys like Hank Fraley are going to get him ready. The guys that have been brought in to lead this team from a positional coaching value, to trust in them is why Brad picks the people that he's picking. One, he has the trust in the fact that they're going to get him ready. Number 2, he's not about, that's why he calls himself a positional villain, right? He's not about just taking players that are in need. He's taking the best football player that fits this team, identity wise, culture wise. And they will figure out a way to get him on the field in a position. It doesn't matter what that position is. Sion Vaki is a good representation of that. Someone that has been a safety his whole career, and they're going to put him at running back because they saw glimpses of him as a running back, just like I did when I broke down the video. But I never expected him to come into the league as a running back. I just thought that there would be potential there as a backup of a backup of a backup. But no, they don't see that. They see something totally different. His mind just works different than other people. And I think to your point, Eric, of the whole Moneyball thing where, they're doing things differently and he's a few steps ahead. I think that there's some truth to that, but I also feel like maybe they're doing the things that should have been done or kind of are being done by some of the other GMs and some of the other coaches that we just haven't witnessed in Detroit yet. He's just doing it at a different clip, at a better rate, higher success rate. I mean, he's hitting like on everything. I would say that his overall score is probably like a 95%, in all drafts. He's hit on all but like 2 players. Now we still have a couple of players that, haven't done much, right? Like Pascal and Levi, and this is their season. Like this has to be their season. Now you can't do anything about injuries. You just can't. You can't predict it. That's why I think some of us are kind of in that boat that says, hey, let's just try to stay away from these known injuries or guys that have an injury, history, and stop preying upon the value picks and let's get guys that, can play the game right away. But to Brad's point, which he said, I could take a guy that has 0 injury history and he could tear his ACL on day 1. You know, you never know. You never know. So it really doesn't matter who you pick or how you pick them. I mean, it matters, but as far as injuries are concerned, everyone's going to get injured at some point. It's football. But Brad Holmes, in my opinion, I put him in the top 3 because he's got to win that trophy before I think he can take that next step. But I don't think that there's another GM in the league that I would want, quite honestly, after watching what he's been able to do and just how well, he's doing it. And I love his moxie, man. I really love his moxie. People call it being cocky, being arrogant, conceited, whatever. No, the guy just is high energy, and he's going to tell you like it is. Go ahead.
The one thing that I love about Brad Holmes is that he doesn't say kind of in every other word like Bob Quinn did. Everything was kind of.
I don't remember
Like
that.
we got a player that kind of and just kind of this, and I used to hate listening to Bob Quinn speak. I used to hate. Yeah, I know you talked about Dan Campbell's quotes
The
other day.
Yeah.
Bob Quinn's were awful. It was just
but-
littered with kind of. So Bob Quinn wanted to be the smartest guy in the room, and I think that Brad Holmes just may very well be, but he's not trying to be it. So shout out to Brad Holmes.
I think the thing about Brad Holmes is he's assertive, right? I mean, he's confident in his assessment of players. It's not, to your point, kind of this guy, kind of that guy. No, this is him. This is who he's going to be.
Mhm.
This is what he is now. This is what he's going to be in the future. Don't judge him now. Judge him in, 2 or 3 seasons from now. Love what Brad Holmes is doing. Clearly, he's been one of the best GMs in the league for the last 3 seasons. But what an amazing, this goes back to Sheila, right? This goes back to who we're going to talk about next, Chris Spielman. Identifying, all of these opportunities within the league to find a general manager that's different, that can do it. And I think they interview like 20 different people for this position or something like that. I don't remember the exact number. But before I forget, by the way, so the Barry Sanders statue, I remember now, that was a Pittsburgh Steelers game. I think 95 is where they took that image from. I think it was Pittsburgh Steelers 95 is where that statue image came from. So up next, Chris Spielman. We got a few more after this, and then we'll be signing off for the day. Chris Spielman, so special assistant to Rod Wood, chairperson. Chris Spielman rejoined the Lions in a front office role as a special assistant to the president and CEO and chairperson in 2021. So he serves, kind of under Rod Wood and Sheila Hamp, right? Kind of their right-hand man. He played an integral role in the hiring of executive vice president and general manager Brad Holmes, head coach Dan Campbell, and reports directly to the president and the CEO Rod Wood. For many years, there has been a disconnect within the franchise as it relates to the business and the football sides of the operation. When Sheila Hamp took the reins, her first order was to do away with divisions and build a front office that thrived on collaboration and communication. Go figure. Collaboration is supposed to work. It's not supposed to be difficult, right? You got to leave the ego at home. Spielman was a fan favorite for many seasons as a linebacker. His hard-hitting style, tenacious and gritty attitude was feared on the turf. Definitely a fan favorite, in my opinion. I mean, he was one of my favorite players to watch for sure. But little did anyone know about his brilliant business and leadership aptitude that was a perfect fit for the culture change coming to Allen Park. Spielman was an integral piece in finding Brad Holmes and the hiring of Dan Campbell. And I there's a lot of amazing qualities about Chris Spielman. The foundation that he put together when his wife was going through breast cancer and how they just wanted to raise like $20,000. They raised millions. And I think that that's when people started to realize that this guy, not only does he have a knack for business, but on a personal level, to level the playing field, an extremely important individual to so many, but also a very caring individual and someone that cares about the players, cares about the team, cares about the organization. cares about the fans. And there's a lot more to Chris that we could get into, but clearly he is one of the most important pieces to this team's resurgence. And that's why I chose him this year to be part of the giveaways, 12 signed helmets that we're going to be giving away. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do, because at 5,000 subscribers, we start our first giveaway with the mini helmets. And Chris Spielman will be on those. Penny Sewell will be on another set. And that's what we're going to start with at 5,000. And then every 500. So make sure you guys share the channel, share the streams, like, comment, subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications if you want to know when we're live, because that's when we're going to give away things, and you got to be in to win. So next up, Chief Operating Officer Mike Disner. But before we get there, what do you guys got to say about Chris?
I think, one thing that's maybe overlooked about Chris is that it was kind of a natural thing for him, having a brother Rick Spielman, who was very integral in creating some of those Vikings teams. Now, the Vikings, say what you will, they could get to the playoffs, but they couldn't do too much in it. But he was a part of putting the teams together that could win games, that could win divisions and things of this nature. So I think he had a strong foundation, not only just from being a football player, but also from having a brother who was a GM. That's a brain that he could pick. And he probably sits in with him now because he's no longer in Minnesota. So he probably willingly gives up the goods. So I think it's just a strong foundation that he's coming from. And he was a natural pick.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah. So Chris Spielman, amazing player for the Lions, right? He came in all sorts of Pro Bowls. He was fantastic. One of my favorite players to ever watch play defense for the Lions, and I really see a lot of Chris Spielman in Jack Campbell. At least I'm hoping I see it. And the thing about Chris Spielman, he was being an announcer for I think Fox, and he gave all that up, being an announcer, to come to the Lions because he wants that Super Bowl ring that he never got as a player. He couldn't get it as a player. The teams just were never good enough. Well, now he has a chance to go back and work for a team and get a ring doing it his way instead of somebody else's way. And he was such a huge part in bringing in the right coach, bringing in the right GM, and then helping Sheila with everything from the fan experience all the way up to what players they're picking. I think he's got his fingers in a little bit of everything throughout the entire organization. And a few people have said that Spielman is the glue that keeps all of this together. He does so much behind the scenes that no one ever sees and no one ever hears about.
Yeah, I would agree, man. He's definitely the glue. I've heard that representation before too. So Mike Disner, you got to remember, I wrote this a year ago, so some of these people might not be with the team anymore, but Mike Disner joined the Lions in 2019. Disner brought in extensive knowledge of player contract negotiations, salary cap regulations, and NFLPA compliance to the team. Now, during the 2021 offseason, Disner worked alongside Sheila Hamp, Rod Wood, and Chris Spielman to reshape the culture and leadership of the Lions football operation. The group led a broad search that resulted in the hiring of Lions Executive Vice President and General Manager Brad Holmes, and then followed that up with Dan Campbell like the next day. Mike Disner has been another integral part of this team and helping this team get to the next level, but understanding, how these contracts work, salary cap regulations, what they can do, what they can't do, how they can stretch it, make it work for them, and NFLPA compliance. I don't think it's any surprise now that Jalen Reeves-Maben is the president of the NFLPA. I'm sure a lot of this stuff was kind of put in place, to get some of our members of this team to be part of the NFL from a broader scope. And it's no surprise to me. So Mike Disner obviously has been very important to this team. But next, we're going to move on to Dan Campbell. So on January 20th, 2021, the Detroit Lions named Dan Campbell the franchise's new head coach. Now, his first press appearance. It really set some people back like, oh my goodness, who did we just hire? Like, who is this meathead that he kept getting called, right? Nobody really took him seriously. They thought that what just went down on live TV was a travesty. And that came out from multiple sources, multiple, 3 and 4 letter, agencies around the country, doing sports media, labeled Dan Campbell this meathead, this guy that doesn't know anything, is going to be a problem. He's not going to work out. He doesn't know football. Man, were they wrong. And I'm so glad that they are wrong. You can go back and listen to Stephen A. Smith or anybody else, that was around back then, and just listen to their clips and how now they're trying to filter that stuff off the internet because they were so wrong. They can never just admit when they're wrong, right? That they made a mistake, that they had a bad take. I do it all the time. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. If I make a mistake, I make a mistake. There's no sense for me to hold on to something and try to pound that, home and make people believe my story when it's not right. And man, Stephen A. Smith, were you so wrong about Dan Campbell, among other things. But Dan Campbell came to Detroit with 23 years of NFL experience. So it's not like he didn't know the game of football. He had 12 years as a coach, 11 as a player. In his first year as the Lions head coach, Campbell helped instill a new culture built on grit, conviction, again, collaboration on and off the field. Upon arrival, Campbell assembled a proven coaching staff that included several former NFL players. This was huge. This was a big key that nobody was really catching on to in the very beginning. All of these previous NFL players brought a wealth of knowledge and experience and passion to the Detroit Lions roster. Campbell has given the fan base a new vision, one of hope and promise. His one-liner on media days have injected an enthusiasm missing from this organization for decades. His ability to turn one of the oldest and most financially depleted teams into a competitor with one of the youngest rosters is nothing short of incredible. My favorite quote of Dan happened at the end of Hard Knocks in 2022, and he pulled it off in fitting fashion. He said the 2022 Detroit Lions will be the team that can and will. That statement obviously stood, and he's cashed it in. They are the team that can and will. Maybe it didn't happen in 2022, but it did at the end of the season, right? I mean, towards the end of the season, they really put it together, and they showed us glimpses of who they could become. And in 2023, they did it. I mean, they really showed us what's next and just how good this team can be. In conclusion about Dan Campbell, and there's so much that I could go into about Dan, but this is an old article. There are many more members of this organization that are not listed, who are just as important to the success and future of this team. To fit all these pieces together, it's not an easy task. To develop symmetry and cohesion with a unified direction often never comes to fruition for an organization. The Lions have found a way to break the chains that have held them back for decades by assembling a group of professionals with the same mission and vision. The Lions ownership, front office, and coaches have had an amazing impact on the city, the fan base, and the organization, an impact that is turning into one of the hottest teams in the NFL. Again, I wrote this prior to last season, and we became the hottest team in the NFL. So I think my vision was paralleled with what these guys are doing, and ladies, for the Detroit Lions. I could see it. If you really look, you don't have to look hard, but if you really look at what this team's doing, even at a granular level, if you really want to get granular with it, it's different. But that's Motown. It's always been different. They set themselves apart. Some of the hardest blue-collar working people in the nation. And that's why this team is going to go places, because they work just like the city does. They've identified just like the city is. And that's why, the term grit, all grit, is going to stick around for many more years to come, and why this team is so exciting right now. So Dan Campbell, what does he mean to you guys?
All I care about is you guys, man. Just got to trust me. The whole meathead thing when it comes to football at the NFL level, I don't think can apply. I mean, you hear about how difficult it is to learn these playbooks and things of this nature. Everyone knew a meat-headed football player in high school, We don't really have those in the NFL. You've got to be smart. You've got to be intelligent, especially if you're playing a skill position. And the tight end position is a skill position. And to study under, to learn under Sean Payton, who is widely considered to be one of the best head coaches in the NFL. He was the interim head coach in Miami. He's from the Parcells tree, right? He was coached by Parcells. So I don't see where the whole meathead thing came from. Yeah, because he said he was going to bite kneecaps. That's grit, man. Football is a violent game, and he was speaking to the violence of football when he talked about how this team was going to fight and claw, because you have to fight and claw like that to win football games. So the meathead thing was always off base, and obviously there's a lot of media members who want to look down on football players and coaches that speak that way because they feel like they are more intelligent because they have a degree from a certain university, and that's the only type of intelligence that you can have. If you don't have that type of intelligence, you're dumb. So I think that's what the whole thing was going on with Dan Campbell. But as far as how they brought him in, let's not just look at Dan Campbell and Chris Spielman. We talked about all these guys today. We talked about Dan Campbell, Chris Spielman. We talked about we didn't say too much about Megatron. We talked about Barry Sanders. But the culture that has been instilled is being instilled by people who know the city.
Mm-hmm.
All of these people know the city. Chris Spielman knows the city. Dan Campbell played for the Detroit Lions. He was here in the 0-16 season. Barry Sanders was here for 10 years. Megatron, same. So all these people know the city. These are the brand ambassadors. These are the faces of this franchise. Sheila Hamp grew up in the city. As you said, grew up with football. So all of these people understand how the city works, and they know who to bring in and how to bring these people in. And that's why the culture has been so revitalized and so great here. And this is the job that they've done. So kudos to all of the people. Kudos to the meathead MCDC.
Yeah, and I think the meathead thing is kind of a deception, you know. Dan Campbell with the helmet on for the Grand Prix, and everybody just gave him so much crap for all that. I think it was a deception. I think he wanted people to think that he's dumb and that he's a meathead and, you know, he's just being silly, when in reality, he's being serious. And that's really not who he is. Because if you look back when we got rid of the offensive coordinator in the first year, that just didn't work out. He took it upon himself to call plays, you know, so he was the one that was calling the plays before Ben Johnson came in. So he has to be smart enough to come up with the offense and run the offense and call the offense. So he's not a meathead. He can really do it. And I believe that, you know, I know Ben Johnson's running the offense, and he's the offensive coordinator now, but it all gets approved by Dan Campbell. Yes, no, this is what we're doing. We're going for it on fourth down. We're not going for it on fourth down. It all runs through Dan. And, you know, without Dan, there is no Ben Johnson. And without Ben Johnson, I kind of think there is no Dan Campbell either for the offense. But Dan is way smarter than he lets on.
1,000%. And matter of fact, Brad Holmes even mentioned something very similar to that. It might have been last year during either combine or draft week. It might have been combine. But he was talking about Dan Campbell and the whole meathead thing, and how people didn't give Dan Campbell enough respect for just how football intelligent he was, and how much he really understands about the game, not only as a leader, as a coach, but truly understanding the game of football and the vision that he had. And he kind of said something similar to, you know, let people think that Dan's just some meathead. Matter of fact, I hope that they do. Like, you know, you underappreciate Dan Campbell, and he's going to come and bite you. You know, he will come and bite your kneecap off because he's going to be sneaky with just how intelligent he really is. And I think that he's proven it with a lot of the games that we've won and some of the calls that he's made, albeit some fans don't agree with, right? We've had some situations that maybe he would love to take back, and he's said as much. But Brad Holmes has made it very clear that Dan Campbell is a very intelligent football mind, and he doesn't get enough respect for that. And he's okay with that because he would rather have people think that Dan Campbell just doesn't know what he's doing and watch Dan take full advantage of it and get him on Sunday. So good show today. I know that according to Lord Voldemort, who's no longer a part of the channel anymore, it is a boring show. But listen, I mean, these types of shows are not going to be high energy. We're recapping articles. We're talking about Lions legends, and that stuff just isn't overly exciting. It's a lot of information to kind of get out and read, and there's not a ton of interaction. But he won't be back part of the channel anyway. I don't have time.
He's a Packer fan.
I don't have time for foolishness. Just don't do it. So you want to be a douchebag, then you're gonna get booted. I just don't play with it. Plus, there's some other people that I know that are intentionally trying to do things. I'm not naive. IP tracking is a real thing. Just if you know how to use it. So let's get into last part of the show. Be real quick. Christian Boer. He's put out some decent articles lately. But the post minicamp defensive depth chart. So we spoke a little bit about this last week on where, or maybe it was this Monday, but where the Lions, depth chart kind of resides now, after mandatory minicamp. So real quickly, I'll run through it. Defensive side of the ball is, I believe, what he's talking about here. Defensive depth chart. So nose tackle, DJ Reader, Broderick Martin, number 1, number 2. Defensive tackle, Ali McNeil, Levi Onwuzurike at number 2 backup, and then Mekhi Wingo as number 3, Kyle Pecco, and then Chris Smith as 4 and 5. Defensive line, do you guys see anybody else that belongs in here? I find it interesting that he's not mentioning some of the other players because he's putting Josh Paschal as a defensive end. Now, Josh Paschal plays inside and outside. He's kind of that hybrid role. Does he belong as an interior defensive tackle? I guess I don't know. I guess we'll see where they put him. But according to Christian Boer, he's defensive end. So defensive tackle, DJ Reader, Broderick Martin. Nose tackle, DJ Reader, Broderick Martin. Defensive tackle, Ali McNeil, Levi Onwuzurike, and then Mekhi Wingo. Any thoughts on that, Chef? I mean, it is what it is, right?
That's pretty much what we have until they put the pads on. I'm interested to see what Mekhi Wingo is able to do. Obviously, Onwuzurike is coming back from a back injury, but we've heard good things from Dan Campbell. He's been able to put on weight now because his body, his back can sustain it. So he's obviously going to be playing like a man possessed because he knows that his career hasn't been able to start the way that he wanted it to start. And now he has an opportunity. First time he's going to be healthy. So I think it'll be a battle between him and Wingo. Everyone was very surprised that Wingo was there that late and we were able to grab him. So it's going to be a good battle in camp.
Do you think that there's any way possible that Wingo doesn't make the roster? Because I personally feel like he's a lock.
No. I don't think he doesn't make the roster.
I don't think so either. What do you think, Eric? I don't know how much you've paid attention the last week in Vegas, but where are you at with the defensive roster right now as far as defensive tackle and nose tackle?
It's funny because people were getting on my Facebook and saying, "Can't you just take one day off of the Lions, even though you're in Vegas?" And no, I couldn't. I still had to. I had to read everything and watch everything I could as much as I could while I was out there. And my thing is this, it's nice seeing Martin as number 2 on the depth chart, so I really want to see him break out this year. It'd be really nice to see. And seeing Wingo that far up, heck yeah. Let's see what this kid can do too. It's very interesting. And if I remember correctly, I was listening to the defensive coaches this morning, and they mentioned that Wingo could be interior or on the edge.
Yeah, he's inside outside too. He's kind of a tweener as far as a defensive tackle, and he can play, defensive end, but he can get really good interior, pass rush going, which it has me excited. I'm more excited about the interior pass rush than I am about the outside, because I believe that the interior has always been the path to the quarterback. Here's my question though. So we don't have anybody outside of Broderick Martin as a nose tackle. So right now, week 1, if DJ Reader is not in, Broderick Martin is starting next to Ali McNeil. That's what I'm understanding. But then when you listen to Terrell Williams, he was saying he likes to put some of the lighter guys on the inside. He was talking about mixing things up. Is that, because we don't have the personnel, and maybe Broderick wouldn't be a starter in week 1? Is he just trying to cover his tracks, or do we have an identified issue right now with not having a third defensive nose tackle? What do you think, Chef?
No, I don't think it's an issue, because camp cuts happen all the time. So if they're not, and I don't want to do this because we did this last year. If they're not satisfied with what Broderick Martin is bringing to the table, and if Reader is not ready to go week 1, they'll sign somebody. They'll bring somebody in to help stem the tide. And then, as he said, if he likes to have the lighter guys in there, then you might see Mekhi Wingo starting.
Yeah, or Pascal. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Pascal would probably get the edge over Wingo right now, but that's going to be a big camp competition between Pascal, playing interior as opposed to, more on the outside. Very interesting. So defensive end, and this is what we were kind of talking about. So starters, you have Aiden Hutchinson, Marcus Davenport. I don't think that's any surprise. As we know, Marcus Davenport hasn't had a ton of time through mini camps, right? No TAs. It'll be interesting to see what he does in training camp. But backups, Josh Pascal and James Houston. And then you have reserves as John Kaminsky, Matthew Betts, Mitchell Agudi, Isaac Uwu, and Nate Lynn. The last 2 being UDFAs that were taken this year after the draft. So Aiden and Marcus, they're locks, clearly. Josh Pascal, to me, I feel like he's probably going to be more of an interior defensive tackle to start the season, only because what other big bodies do we have, outside of Broderick Martin? And Broderick's really going to have to show that he's ready to go, right? So I think that Josh is probably going to, make the roster by default. 1, he should, but 2, we're kind of light there. I mean, a minute ago, I thought that we were heavy at defensive line. Now I'm almost feeling like we're a little bit light when the way that, Christian Boer kind of breaks this down. I don't know if I agree with how he's slotting guys, but if this was correct, then yeah, I almost feel like we're kind of light at defensive tackle, and maybe we do bring in somebody else. But you still have, I guess you still have Kyle Pecco, who's a little bit bigger body than Mekhi Wingo, that could slide up behind Broderick Martin or in place of Broderick Martin. So on the end there, any thoughts for you, Eric?
Not really on the end, but the thing that worries me is DJ Reader going to be ready for minicamp? And if he's not, is he going to be ready for the season? Yeah, training camp. And is he going to be ready for the beginning of the season? Is he going to start the season on the IR? What's going to happen there? And why haven't we seen anything out of Davenport? Was he injured? Why hasn't he been in the OTAs and stuff? He's there, but we haven't seen him doing anything yet, as far as I know.
So I know that he was recovering from some injury from last season, was he not? Didn't he have something going on?
He had like 5 surgeries last offseason. So,
jeez.
That's a lot, man.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hand and shoulder surgeries. But I mean, for as far as Davenport, man, just keep him in bubble wrap. Just unwrap him week 1. I don't want to see him doing anything. I'm afraid he's going to get injured. So you know what he could do. You know his potential. Just keep him like getting mental reps or whatever. I don't know, but I don't believe in his health, man. That I just don't. Five surgeries in one offseason is wild. It's just crazy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they even as minor as some of them more than likely were, that still impacts your body, especially if you're going under. I mean, anesthesia is no joke. It still stresses your body out. Yeah, I don't really have a big update on Marcus Davenport, so I'm not real sure where things reside with him. Even a quick internet search, I'm not seeing a whole lot. So any of the insiders that are listening to this, if they are, get us some information on Marcus Davenport. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to what Terrell Williams said again. I don't know if he addressed Marcus Davenport. I know that he likes Marcus Davenport quite a bit, but my question is he going to be able to go week 1? If he's not, so then you have the question: is it Josh Pascal? Is it James Houston? Is it Mathieu Betts? I mean, right now I've got Mathieu Betts ahead of John Kaminsky, but I'm afraid of losing John Kaminsky too.
Yeah. Well, according to Dan Campbell, everybody except for DJ Reader, obviously they said that DJ Reader, it's they're gonna decide like when he starts practicing, but they said everybody because they asked about Mosley as well. So they said everybody who if they are not ready for camp specifically, they will receive a large chunk of camp. So even if they're not ready to go at the beginning of camp, they're going to get in a lot of camp. So he expects everyone, again, aside from DJ Reader, to be available during training camp and to be available for week 1. So that was per Dan Campbell.
So according to this, where did it just go? According to this article, it says edge rusher Marcus Davenport missed 13 games with the Vikings last season with an ankle injury and did not participate with the Lions this spring. He was seen during the 3-day mini camp working on the side with trainers, but he is expected to be ready at the start of training camp. As far as Mosley goes, that would be interesting because if you remember last year, Mosley was a go for training camp, but then he had that cleanup surgery that put him behind. And at one point they thought he was going to make week 1 and then he didn't. So it'd be interesting to see. I just hope that they don't rush Mosley at all. So moving on to linebacker, starter Jack Campbell, backup Derek Barnes in the middle at the Mike spot. Will linebacker Alex Anzalone as the starter, Malcolm Rodriguez as the backup. Reserves Jalen Reeves-Maben, then Ben Nyman, who we just acquired this week, excuse me, and then Deron Gilbert. So Sam linebacker, you have nobody listed. So that's where Christian Boer screws up. Like we have 3 linebacker spots, so you can't not list them. Right, you have to spread them out across the 3 linebacker spots.
Isn't that where James Houston is going to be?
That's what I'm saying. Like, so he has them listed as defensive end, and those are 2 different positions. You've got defensive end, outside linebacker, the Sam position. They're all different. So you've got to list it that way. So I'm not sure why he has it listed as we don't just have 2 linebackers. We have 3. We are 4-3 base defense.
I saw James Houston doing some coverage drops today or yesterday, I should say, in a video coming out of OTAs. So yeah, he'll probably be in that Sam room, and he'll probably rotate. Yeah.
So if we look at if we take into consideration last year's roster, it would have been on the Sam side. It would have been James Houston. This year, it would be James Houston, probably Mathieu Betts, and possibly Jalen Reeves-Maben. I see Jalen as more of a will linebacker, though, but it could be Jalen Reeves-Maben on that side. I'm not sold that Malcolm really should be in the will spot. I see him more obviously as a Mike linebacker, but then there's Derek Barnes too. I mean, where does he really slot? Derek, where does he really slot? As a linebacker, can he play both? inside and outside. I mean, I thought last year he was more on the left side of the ball. Was he not? I guess I'd have to look
You
at
have to look at it, yeah.
his lineups, but I guess at any rate, if we just lump all the linebackers together, I don't think that there's any secret that Alex Anzalone is going to make this roster. Malcolm Rodriguez is going to make this roster. Jalen Reeves may even better make this roster after getting that contract. Jack Campbell is going to make the roster. Derek Barnes is going to make this. So that's 5. Now, the fact that the Lions picked up another linebacker this week, that tells me that maybe they are going to keep 6 linebackers. And, they weren't sold on what Steel Chambers was able to do this season so far. Ben Nyman has a great shot if they're going to keep 6. He really does. With his experience, and especially as a really, really good special teams player. He ranked, somewhere in the top 53 last year for special teamers. Lions love that. So any comments there on you, Eric, for the linebacking?
I think that Jack Campbell, what we were hearing today from the linebackers coach, that Jack Campbell didn't have an off season. He went right into the playbook. He went right into the film. And even the coach said, I feel sorry for his girlfriend because he didn't take any time off. He 100% put everything he has into this in the off season, into training, into the playbook, into watching film. So watch out. You're going to see a huge, huge jump from Jack Campbell this year. That's what
Jack's
I'm predicting.
He's going to be special this year, I think.
Yep.
What do you think, Chef?
Yeah, as far as Campbell, man, just the fact that he didn't take any time off. I mean, you make millions of dollars, man. You should be able to dedicate yourself to this. There are people that can't and won't because the millions is what they're after. But I mean, you can spend money later, but at least, be great at something, and the fact that he has that mentality, he's going to be successful. I mean, people with that mentality always are.
Yeah, I believe that too. I mean, if you listen to what Coach Williams had to say last night, the mentality of Aiden Hutchinson is what they're looking for. He doesn't take time off. He's totally invested into being the best player he can be. Jack Campbell is the exact same mentality, and I love it. I love seeing that, these guys are totally invested. Money spends itself, I mean, it is what it is, but these guys are here for a reason. And I firmly believe that the Lions have the right guys, the right mentality on this team. We'll go far and above any talent, you've got to have the talent, but you have to have the mentality to go with it. Cornerbacks, you have Carlton Davis as a starter, Terrion Arnold as a backup. Starters, Carlton Davis, Terrion Arnold. Backups, Emmanuel Mosley, Ennis Rakestraw. Reserves, Khalil Dorsey, Kendall Vildor, Stephen Gilmore, Craig James, Morris Norris. Look, I think the first 4 are locks. My only question is Emmanuel Mosley. If he's not able to go week 1, I hope that the Lions don't make the same mistake that they did last year. Give him the injury reserve designation for the first 4 weeks of the season. Let him sit till week 5. We have plenty of guys in there that can play. You still have Kendall Vildor, who I know a lot of people weren't extremely excited about coming back, but there was more positive than negative to what he was able to do last season. He just did not have a surrounding cast of players around him, that could help him. And it was kind of like everything was on fire, and it's like you could only put out so many fires, and the D-backs were a big issue, especially when Branch was out. I mean, when Branch wasn't in the game, I mean, we saw a lot of things go wrong. Khalil Dorsey, I know he suffered the injury this last week. I still don't have a timetable as to if he'll be back for training camp. I hope that he is. I do like Khalil Dorsey, and he's been playing very well this year. So outside of the top 4, like I said, my only question is Emmanuel Mosley. So will the Lions be keeping Khalil Dorsey, Kendall Vildor, and Stephen Gilmore, and finish camp up with 7 corners and Emmanuel Mosley with an injury reserve designation for the first 4 weeks? I think that's a great possibility. So out of the reserves, Khalil Dorsey, Kendall Vildor, Stephen Gilmore, Craig James and Morris Norris. Chef, who do you feel sticks around?
So I don't really hear a lot about why did I just blank on his name? Gilmore.
Yeah.
Other than he's Stephon Gilmore's brother. So I'm not sure that he'll stay. I think Morris Norris will stay.
Really?
Because he's a guy that that they wanted, right? They went out and wined him and dined him. They took him out to dinner. So Brad met with him before the draft. So obviously it depends on how well these guys perform in camp. But I believe that he's someone that they want on the team. So he'll have the opportunities to sink or swim. But again, like I said, I don't know. I haven't heard too much about what Stephen Gilmore is doing. So I'm not exactly sure if he'll have another year. He definitely should be on the practice squad, though, if he doesn't make the active roster.
So I didn't know that there was that much excitement about Morris Norris prior to the season. I must have missed that, but he still has to perform, to your point. I mean, he's, you know, you can wine and dine a date all day, but if they don't perform later on, I'm just kidding. They're not going to stick around, right? So got to see him perform in camp. Got to see him perform. Glad I got some laughter out of you guys this morning. It's about time. Eric, what do you think, man, on these guys?
So the DBs, the one thing I am really, really, really excited for, it's not one player. It's two. Our first and our second round picks. And I'm sure they're not both going to start right away. I'm sure they're both not going to be on the field at the same time all the time just to begin the season. But when we get there, after 6 games, after 8 games, after 9 games, after 20 games, whatever it is, these two are brothers. And they are going to be able to communicate without even saying anything, without even thinking it. The other one's going to know what to do. And the fact that they're coming in at the same time and they're going to play together, that's going to be awesome. Whether Rakestraw ends up being a backup to Terrion or ends up being in one of the other positions, I am so excited to see these two together on the field at the same time. And tell me the last time the Lions had 2 players that came in together, cornerbacks, and were successful.
Oh, it's definitely been a long time.
You can't.
I don't think that there has been a time, but it's going to be a minute, I think, before we see both of those guys on the field together. I mean, it could be a year or two. Just depends on the health of Carlton Davis and, you know, Amik Robertson and where he slots. Because right now, Amik Robertson and Brian Branch are listed as the nickels, with Brian Branch as a starter and Amik Robertson as a backup, according to Christian Boer. And I think this is totally wrong. My opinion, I think that Amik Robertson is going to be up with the corners. I don't think that Amik is going to be slotted as a nickel unless, I mean, I think he'll be in the slot. Don't get me wrong. I think he'll be playing that position. I just don't think that he's going to be slotted as a backup to Branch. I think the Branch is probably going to, go back to free safety potentially, which would give Amik Robertson the starting nickel position. But I firmly believe that Amik Robertson, Carlton Davis, and Terrion Arnold are going to make up your starting 3 corners to start the season, with Brian Branch at nickel, unless, like I've said very early in this offseason, Brian Branch heads back to free safety and beats out Kirby Joseph. And if that happens, then I think it's wide open for what can happen. And that's what Dan Campbell spoke to, is it is so deep. They have, a good problem, which is they have too many good players right now. It's going to be hard to sift through who to start and who to sit, because it's going to be a tough decision. So camp is the bloodbath that, they've been speaking to. Before we move on and get final thoughts here, safety, Kirby Joseph as a starter, Ifeatu Melifonwu as a starter. So Kirby is a free safety, Ifeatu is a strong safety, Brandon Joseph as a backup, CJ Moore as a backup. Then we got Jalen Garnes and Lauren Strickland as UDFA pickups this year. Clearly the first 4, I think, are going to make this team: Kirby, Ifeatu, Brandon, and CJ. Brandon's been playing great, but the reason why I wanted to talk about them with Brian Branch and Amik Robertson is overall, I think that those 6 players are going to make up your three, somewhat safety positions: nickel, free, and strong. So what do you guys got to say? We'll start with you, Chef, on nickel position, Brian, Amik, and then the safeties.
So I think Jim O'Neill, he said that AG kind of likes his nickels to come from the safety position. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Amik Robertson in the mix for a little bit of both, outside corner and nickel, just because if AG is trying to slot a safety as a nickel, Brian Branch might stay there. But again, that's one of those good problems to have. I really would like to be able to see Brian Branch, Iffy, and Kirby on the field all at the same time.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think the flexibility that you have with Iffy and Branch coming off the blitz, the disguises that you disguise Branch as the blitzer and you send Iffy, and vice versa. I think that's just going to wreak havoc on offenses. Brandon Joseph he's being spoken of highly. Again, Jim O'Neill, who is the assistant DB's coach and kind of the safety coach. Interesting story with him. He wanted to hire AG 5 years ago, and now he's here working for AG. So that was an interesting story. But yeah, he spoke highly of Brandon Joseph. Brandon Joseph's been playing well. We're familiar with Brandon Joseph, so I think he makes the roster. And for the UDFAs, there's always a guy. There's always a guy that pops in camp. Last year we had Dylan Drummond who popped in camp, but he didn't do too much in the preseason. So we'll see how that goes as far as the UDFAs once they get into pads and they get into camp and they're performing there.
Yeah, I think some of these guys make up the practice squad, of course. I mean, it seems like last year we had a lot of UDFAs in the practice squad. They seem to go really young in the practice squad, and I'm not understanding of the theory with that just yet, or at least I don't think that I have a good opinion on it this morning. But as far as the safeties go, we've got a great problem. We're deep. Brian Branch and Amik Robertson, to your point, man, if you have let me finish that. So Brian Branch and Amik Robertson, whatever one is playing nickel, I'm good with. I just don't see Amik being a starter at the nickel and Brian Branch being left, off the field. I just don't see that happening. I think that Brian obviously is the number one position at nickel and probably number one, number two at free safety. The biggest thing that you said is Kirby, Ifiatu, and Brian on the field at the same time. Big nickel package, big dime package. You could definitely see those three plus Terrian, plus Carlton, plus Amik, 6 DBs in, or drop Amik and 5 DBs in the nickel. That is a scary defensive backfield for any team to have to go up against. So finish thoughts on cornerbacks and safeties with you, Eric.
Yeah, this is going to be something we have not seen as Lions fans in a long, long time. We have not had a competent backfield forever. So I really think that this DB room is going to surprise us this year. I think our safeties are going to be great. And whether it's Branch or Kirby back there, I think it's going to be interchangeable. I think Branch is going to surprise some people and get a few more of those catches like he got against Kansas City in that very first game where he ran it back for a touchdown. I think you might see a couple of more of those this year from Mr. Brian Branch.
Yeah, I think that he's definitely got the hand skills. So, all right, good show today, fellas. Again, Lions Legends, I'll be doing it at least once a week. Maybe we'll just slide it in on Wednesdays. It's a little bit of a slower show. We'll mix it in with some Lions news and rumors. As far as Lions practices, what do we have left for practice? So I think that OTAs are done. I'm sorry, mandatory mini camp's done, but the next practice should be training camp, as far as I remember right now. I don't have the schedule in front of me.
I think they're practicing some this week with the veterans.
I thought the
Or
veterans
was it
were
with
done.
the rookies?
I think
the
it's the
rookies,
rookies.
Rookies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Veterans were released for the summer.
yeah. Except for James Houston.
He's still a rookie, man. I mean, he's only got what 8.5, 9 games in his career so far.
Yeah,
And he's
But-
on his second contract.
but according to PFF, I mean, 8 games is all you need to be a Hall of Famer. So, shout out Jordan Love.
You do all these weird shout outs, but whatever. So anyway, I'm trying to find the schedule here. I don't have it in front of me, so I'll just have to do it later. Actually, here we go. What does this one say? February, March, April, May, and June. So OTAs, mandatory minicamp. So last year, the Lions OTAs minicamp stretched from May 23 to June 15. However, yeah, this doesn't tell me anything. All right, I don't know the schedule, but training camp's coming up. Obviously, tickets are going to be released pretty soon. And last year, we gave away quite a few tickets to training camp. This year, I'm going to have people meet me at training camp. So we're gonna go in together, do some group pictures. Maybe we'll do some videos or something. But I want to meet some more fans this year and get into some training camp activity. It's going to be a fun season. It's going to be a fun summer. I appreciate you guys joining us this morning. And shout out to everybody in the chat. I know we didn't get a lot of interaction with you guys this morning, but you guys are rocking and rolling as usual. So you guys are great. I appreciate you guys as always. Appreciate members here of our panel. We got Chef Talks Lions Friday night. All Grit Pod should be on Friday night at 7 p.m. is going to be the first premiere show. And back on Rise and Grind morning tomorrow. And then Thursday night at 7. I'm backing up the Off the Cuff podcast to 7 p.m. Just Mondays and Thursdays now until training camp hits. And then we're obviously going to have a lot of live stuff going on at training camp and more information. We're going to get some things set up this week. I got a lot of work to do to get these channels set up so that we can have other people just kind of do their own shows. And that way I don't have to be part of it. Maybe it's more opportunity with Rise and Grind morning show to bring in some more people. You guys have an excellent day. Appreciate you guys. Hang on after the show and brief chat afterwards. Go on Pride. Go Detroit Lions. You guys take care. Bye-bye.